Invest in Ethiopia, one of the fastest growing economies.
Ethiopia has been able to achieve socio-economic stability and sustainable growth in recent years. The overall situation of the country and the existing conducive investment opportunity are luring more and more foreign direct investment to the country. Ernest and Young managing partner Zemadina Nagatu made a brief presentation on the Ethio-US investment forums held in Houston, Texas and Los Angeles, California, showcasing the potentials and suitable environment for foreign investment in Ethiopia.
If Ethiopia continues to perform as it is now, or even better, 2 years from now, it will be the third largest economy in Africa. All 54 countries in Africa combined could not produce the profit of one airline based in Ethiopia. We have the cheapest electricity per kilowatt hour of any country on earth. Ethiopia owns and operates the largest merchant fleet in Africa. I'm sure some of this will come as a surprise to a lot of you, but we have the fourth largest economy in Africa. One of the fastest in the world, of course, this is from the economists, but we've done comparative countries. The GDP growth the last few years has been faster in Ethiopia than anywhere else in Africa. But this is our sort of what we call the money shot, okay? This is our forecast. We took a bold decision in 2009, in the summer of 2009, to make a forecast of the Ethiopian economy ascendancy. And a lot of people actually thought we were crazy. You remember, in the summer of 2009, we all thought the global economy was going to collapse and we were going to be in bankruptcy, right? But we made a decision at that time, if trends continue as they are, if the state continues its determination as it does, and a lot of other factors, we made a forecast back then that by 2025, the Ethiopian economy will be the third largest. By 2025. We just did a revision. For the guys, the media in the room, please take note. What we've done is, it's been accelerated. If the trend continues as is, now it's a big as is, but we think it's doable. If Ethiopia continues to perform as it is now, or even better, 2 years from now, it will be the third largest economy in Africa. Only Nigeria and South Africa will be bigger than Ethiopia. This is a major achievement for a country which was left for dead 22 years ago, right? It does not yet produce a single barrel of oil. I know there are a number of people here in this room who will talk about that this afternoon. This doesn't even factor what we call the plus. If a lot of these Texans who come to Ethiopia and dig oil, and that would be a plus to this. The ultimate goal of the country is to be what's called the middle income. For a lot of emerging markets, achieving middle income is the goal. It means it has a lot of implication for investors. And our view is, by 2024, a year ahead of schedule, we think Ethiopia will achieve middle incomes. But we're also the second most populous country in Africa. Only Nigeria has more population than Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, the pyramid is inverted. Very young population. Very young, median age 20. So if you're an investor, you want. I mean, here in America, we adore youth, right? I mean, that's what you get in Ethiopia. Young population, large but young. But I got to tell you this, a lot of people, even our analysts, thought this was wrong. So what does it mean you have a young population? Does it die off early? No, not anymore. When I first started going to Ethiopia several years ago, the average age, life expectancy was 42. At that time, I was 41, so I thought I only had a year left to live. Huh? Now it's 63, so I have quite a few more years to go to survive. But look at this. The interesting thing is, we went from 42 to 63 in a very short period of time. Look at Kenya, it's at 61. Again, comparative countries to give you a frame of reference where we're heading as a country. Only one city in the United States is bigger than Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, New York City. I don't know how the population of Houston, but it's under 1 million, right? If I'm not wrong. But rapid urbanization is going to transform most emerging markets, including Ethiopia. By 2025, we're expecting Ethiopia to be the 5th largest city in Africa. One of the reasons of course, to invest in Ethiopia, not only is Addis a very beautiful city, has pleasant weather, but this is a report that just came out from Mercer, the big consulting firm that does this annually. It's one of the least expensive cities in the world to set up a headquarters for your expats to live. You'll notice, which is a big surprise to me, one of the least expensive cities is also happens to be the most beautiful, which is Cape Town. So for Ethiopia to be in the same league as Cape Town is fantastic. Think about this. Not only do we have a rapidly urbanizing country, but one of the least expensive cities. Our forecast shows that there will be multiple urban centers, large urban centers throughout Ethiopia. One of the more inspiring things that we can talk about. This is the section we call Ethiopia's #1 app. As you know, some of the government delegation here will talk to you about this later on. Ethiopia is building the largest hydroelectric power dam in Africa and amongst the top 10 largest in the world. Fully financed by Ethiopia. This is part of the nation-building exercise. We said, you know what, if you guys don't want to finance us, World Bank, others, they were dragging their feet. The Ethiopian people and the Ethiopian government said, decided that we'll finance it. It's no small amount. It's $5 billion. We have the cheapest electricity per kilowatt hour of any country on earth. We're building the dam, as I mentioned to you earlier, but look at it, geothermal, renewable energy. One of the young stars in our firm, he said, tell the Americans we're actually using renewable energy, most of ours. We don't pollute the environment. Fantastic. That's the story of Ethiopia. Hydro, geothermal, solar, all the elements that you can think of for the energy production is readily available in Ethiopia. And finally, on the energy, on the power sector, again, there's a lot more discussion about it. I attended a session last week given by the World Bank. They're forecasting that in the next 9 years, there will be $1 billion worth of electricity export from Ethiopia. $1 billion. And Ethiopia will be the 2nd largest exporter out of South Africa. 1/3 of the audience, I was told here, are interested about resources, oil and gas and everything. The only thing I can say is definitely untapped. Okay? We're currently advising a number of these companies. The one you see on the right is a Chinese company, a very large Chinese company, which is planning to build a pipeline to export gas from Ethiopia. The one on the left might be of interest to you because it's currently in the news. Gazprom, which is the world's largest producer of gas, is now in agreement with Ethiopia to explore for oil and gas. Again, development. And I know a number of people will talk about this section this afternoon. Mining resources, the same thing. Huge untapped resources. Okay? Just one other thing I want to say. There is a whole bunch of American interest in the oil and gas business. A number of them we're advising, including some of the private equity funds, who are committing hundreds of millions of dollars for investment in Ethiopia. Ethiopia can feed. And in fact, when Bill Gates was in Addis last week, and I actually had a chance to ask him a question, if you were to invest in Ethiopia, because right now he's doing it through his foundation, but I said, if you were to invest in Ethiopia, I said, what sector would you invest? He didn't miss a beat. He said agriculture. And he made a very bold forecast. He expects Ethiopia to be a net exporter in the next few years. I know we have a lot of investors from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia, from UAE, who are very eager to be supplied by food grown in Ethiopia. The best way to describe the tourism sector in Ethiopia is untouched. The only thing we don't have is the beach, right? Because as I said earlier, technically we're a landlocked country of our own anyways. But other than that, Ethiopia has enormous potential in the tourism sector. The New York Times this year, they have this annual report. Ethiopia was ranked as the 13th country out of 52 to visit this year by the New York Times. Lonely Planet will have. Virtually every major American hotel chain has invested in Ethiopia. We have the Sheraton, which has been up in the last 15 years. But if you look at the Hyatt, is under construction, which we did the deal. And the Marriott, we're happy to say, is actually owned by an Ethiopian investor. 2 of them are under construction. There's a new Westin, which is about to be completed in the next 1 year or so. And the granddaddy of all is the Hilton, which has been there since the 1960s. So you can see that actually Americans are heavily invested in the tourism sector in Ethiopia, or starting to, putting real money in the sector. The World Bank has an annual ranking called the Ease of Doing Business. They compare countries around the world, 189 countries. They ranked Ethiopia better than 82% of the African countries. 82%. In fact, Ethiopia is the second best performing country in Africa, according to the World Bank, in terms of ease of doing business. But some of you in the back, you may not see it. I wanted to just add something relevant, lighthearted. You know, not only Ethiopia, most of Africa has to do better, but at least you can see that it's actually not as difficult as you think to do business than what sometimes you may get from other sources. All right? And then, of course, the Wall Street Journal just came out last week, or a couple weeks ago, about what they call the Global Investor Sentiment Index in emerging markets. One of the top countries that they've selected amongst the top 20 from global investors is Ethiopia. But one of my favorite was the term that Time Magazine has come up with. They call it forget the bricks, meet the pines. You know what the pines stands for? Philippines, Indonesia, Nigeria, and the E stands for Ethiopia. This is sort of, you know, the sentiment that people are starting to gather about Ethiopia. The ultimate goal of the country is to what this is by far, the most inspiring story we have in Africa. Because one of the challenges we face in Africa is building successful institutions. Anywhere in Africa. But here is one of the most difficult businesses on earth to make money is the airline business. Because I financed all of them over the last 10 years, I should know. Today, we have the biggest airline, by far, without comparison, of anything in Africa. So today, Ethiopian Airlines is twice as big as as Kenya Airways, and definitely made more money last year than all African airlines combined. All 54 countries in Africa combined could not produce the profit of one airline based in Ethiopia. This is an interesting thing. You all think that we export commodities only. Actually, the largest export of Ethiopia is services, anchored by aviation, the airline industry. You all know that, technically speaking, Ethiopia is a landlocked country, technically speaking, right? We just don't have the title deed to the port of Djibouti. Well, that's form over substance for me. But we just happen to have the largest merchant fleet in Africa. In Africa. There are countries with bigger coastlines who don't have half as much ships as we do. Okay? So again, for those who are considering investing in Ethiopia, just keep it in mind. Now, we can talk about the efficiency and other things later on, but the fact of the matter is Ethiopia owns and operates the largest merchant fleet in Africa. We're far from here, I know. It takes 14 hours on a 777 flying direct to come to the United States from Ethiopia. But look at it. Half the global population is less than 8 hours from Ethiopia. Half. Half. Try that from America. Right? So if you're setting up shop in Ethiopia, you can reach 3.5 billion people in less than 8 hours. That's the kind of strategic location I'm sure a lot of people would love to have in terms of setting up shop. And then free trade, the final point on this one is, you know about AGOA. If you don't, I'm sure there are sessions about it. Everything you produce in Ethiopia can enter the United States market, quota-free and duty-free. All right? Same with Europe and in most of Africa eventually. Anybody here from KKR? Right, very good. Anybody here from KKR? Huh? Okay. You all know that was a company that was made famous in the 1980s, right? For that book and movie called Barbarians at the Gate. They're very good at what they do. Last month, they plunked $200 million in Ethiopia. That was their first investment in Africa. Of all places, this is the first time they've ever invested in Africa, and they picked Ethiopia as their destination. Smart people who make a bundle of money. They know what they're doing. And they picked Ethiopia. And what did they buy? They bought the world's largest producer of roses. Those beautiful roses that you see around the world. They bought that company in Ethiopia. Fantastic example. This is real money on the ground. American company. You know where the wire harnesses are manufactured that manages the flaps? Take a wild guess. The Boeing aircraft, the 777 and the 787 Dreamliners that you see flying around the world, the wire harnesses are made in Ethiopia. American ingenuity combined with Ethiopian talent and opportunities. Again, real-life example of what happens when you reform your economy. when you open it up to opportunities of value added like this. Marathon Oil has invested in Ethiopia. They're in partnership with a UK-based company called Tullow Oil, which is a wildcatter. They're exploring for oil. Okay? They took the risk, they invested. Hopefully, soon, one of you two guys, or President of Ethiopia or Foreign Minister, will announce there was a strike, we found oil. So, again, another good example of American money at work. Of course, you all know this, right? GE touches our lives everywhere. Imagination at work is their tagline, right? Well, guess what? GE has now made a decision to build a manufacturing plant in Ethiopia, an assembly plant to produce healthcare equipment. They're already the ones who supply the engines for the Ethiopian Airlines 777s and the 787 Dreamliners. They're also providing, of course, their very fantastic CAT scans and other advanced equipment, but now they're going to be building a plant in Ethiopia. Of course, we all drink Coke, right? So what is there for me to tell you about Coke, other than to say they've committed to invest $500 million over the next 3 to 5 years in Ethiopia. They have been in Ethiopia for 60 years. This is the first time they've ramped up their investments in Ethiopia. Another major American company investing, putting hard dollars in the country.